Good morning, Minecrafters, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 19 Separate Work and Home. So, what's interesting is I was just kind of grabbed a book out of my library because I do that. And this is an old one, a series actually, Richard Carlson's Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, which, with family, with money, blah, 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 blah. Were mostly written back in the 90s. And I was just kind of reading through it, and it just gave me an idea because he talks about way back then the importance of separating work and home, which then brought me back to, that era and actually even earlier. And I remember, as an undergrad college student at St. Mike's back in the 80s, it seems like back when the, dinosaurs were roaming and glaciers were shifting and the earth was covered with ferns. But anyway, obviously pre-cell phone culture, there was a car phone here and there, but pre-cell phone culture. And, I was reading in Richard Carlson's book back in the 90s of one of his big tips back then, which are very applicable, was, with separating work from home, was to have two different phone lines. So I couldn't help because that's obviously, dated itself at this point. And I actually had some memories from back then, like in the 90s, might call, let's say, the mechanic or something, and they had this phone out of their house. So, be, we'll press one for, David's Mechanics and Towing, press two for a haircut, press three for Avon Cosmetics, and that sort of thing. So even though landlines for, I think, the general populace, are all but extinct, what's strange, I got to thinking about this, is that, the context has just changed, but the premise and what we need to do really isn't, it really isn't different. And, one of the things which still holds true definitely, again, the context has just changes. Way back when I was at St. Mike's as a first year, I was on the cross country team and we all got sent to attend the time management workshop, which was a really great idea since we're all, 18 and in this buzzing, wonderful atmosphere surrounded by, lots of kids and fun and choices and things to do. And, and it was a really great idea to have us go to this time management workshop. And one of the things was also about scheduling time for relaxing. And it wasn't even like this booming well-being thing we have going on now. It also wasn't to that extent. It was just to, carve in, some time for relaxing. And another big piece to that was to not study where you relax, where your brain associates with rest. That part has not changed at all. So back in the day, as they say, right, we're in a dorm room, and of course I was, still in northern Vermont then, at my beloved St. Mike's, and so that also meant since we didn't have computers at all, it's hard to go. I know it's quite certainly dating me, obviously. We had to walk across campus to go to the library. There was no, staying in your comfy fleece jammies, at your desk, finding all sorts of information. We had to wrap ourselves up like a burrito in Gore-Tex and go trudging across campus in, below zero temperatures for a good part of the second semester with, winds and everything like that. And however, it was so much healthier to actually muster up the strength, to get across campus, be in the library, because it had this automatic line drawn in the sand. Whatever's not done by the time I leave the library isn't getting done because computers don't exist yet, at least not for everybody. We didn't have them. They weren't there until I think my senior year. So no computers. So there was this automatic boundary set. It was, looking back, that was beautiful because it kind of, took things out of our hands and kind of enforced when you leave the library, you're done. Unless you want to read a little bit, which is fine, but you weren't, you weren't going to be all plugged into the microfiches, and that's really dating myself. It was over. Boundaries set, go home and rest now. And the minute you walked into the dorm room, the brain just unconsciously knows that I'm done now. The day is coming to a close. It's time to unwind and relax. Go chat with somebody down the hall. You know, call home on the and that would have been a payphone in the hallway. So just a much different deal. But the thing, it was implicit. It was just, it was there, and we didn't have to work at the boundary setting like we do now. And I'll tell you, I've done a bunch of webinars. In fact, I feel like webinar woman lately. And though I much prefer in person, not that I'm not totally enjoying these podcasts, I am, because I love that it's just audio. It's got kind of just a nice quality to be able to be out gardening or doing whatever and listening, or sitting on my couch like I am right now in the living room having a conversation with everyone. I think that's excellent. Though I do like that we can take it with us and just be on a walk or something like that. Though with the webinars, I'm certainly an in-person person. I am enjoying them because though it's not ideal, we're in the pandemic, and this kind of the medium for connection we have. We're still connecting it in some way, and it is very nice to meet all these parents, online. And one of the main themes has actually been this. It's been, navigating, being, still in the Rona situation almost a year later. I think all of us were sprinting, and we, thought it would be over by now, and now it's seeming like it's ending, but nobody really knows for sure, and that whole thing. And then because this has been going on since March of 2020, a lot of us have Rona fatigue, right? We're just tired. So now, and we've become conditioned. We are creatures of habit. And, I've been hearing a lot about from my college students as well as their parents now, because I've been engaging with their parents like the last 6 weeks. I mean, I do anyway intermittently, but it's been a condensed reach out to parents. And there's just a lot of main theme around lack of motivation, lack of structure, definitely mental health issues from the loneliness and isolation. And so I'm going to bring some of these strategies in because I think we're not always realizing this. Some of it is not an easy fix, although some of it is, by helping the brain to return to a place where it knows what's going on, which right now for most of us it really doesn't. And separating our work from our home lives, or basically our what we do, whether it's studying or working or a combination of both, from where we associate with relaxation, rest, and leisure. It's interesting too because it's not that like we don't know this. Sometimes it just helps to have someone map it out for us, and to validate us. So on this PowerPoint for the webinar, one of the first things I have there is get up in the morning around the same time. It doesn't mean it needs to be a military drill every day up at 6:31 a.m. And then go run through a swamp. No, it doesn't mean that. It means, however, basically the same time. So let's say it's 7, basically 7. The brain really, really needs that, especially now in the States and the world over, because I don't think it's different. Everybody's still pretty concerned with the Rona. There's lots of shutdowns and lots of still being virtual, or having hours changed and all that sort of thing. Very, very important to wake up at the same time like you would if you were going to school or work or whatever combination. And even if there's, and also we have a lot of erratic schedules. I know I'm starting back in person this week with my wonderful rock star students, and I can't wait. And it's still going to be like a couple of long days, virtual day in the middle. So there's a lot of gray area, and it's important that if it's a day you're virtual versus in person, you're still getting up. Okay, and if you can have some kind of routine, the waking up part is good. If you read the paper and have a nice big tall cup of caffeine, good, savor it, savor the warmth. We've talked about that. If there's a way to involve some early morning movement there, it's just a bonus, a total bonus. A walk. Our youngest, who's in college, got a really good habit of a 15-minute yoga routine in the morning, just 15 minutes, watching the TV, get out the yoga mat. And if you can add that small little bit of, fresh air or something in the morning, that's just even better. I'm talking neurologically speaking, holistic health, mind body connection. If you can add that, it's just great. So then after the morning routine, if it's the newspaper, cup of coffee, or hopefully a yoga routine or a walk, and then shower, right? Get dressed. I know that sounds ridiculous. This sounds so basic, which just shows how we become so fatigued and so fogged over, myself included. I will humbly admit that I got wrapped in it for the first few weeks when the world closed too. I think I mentioned earlier in different episodes, or maybe one episode, my colleagues and I were joking, on Zoom in our meetings about changing our night jammies to our day jammies when, everybody's laughing because everybody can relate. We can relate. It gets so easy to thinking to kind of start thinking every day is Sunday morning. And when we're trying to work and be productive or study and be productive, this is so confusing to the brain. And it's just basic facts. We are not going to be our best selves, meaning our best professional selves, our best student selves when we're sitting there in fleece pajamas at 2 in the afternoon. We just aren't, because the brain is in a different mode. And it's also important to mention, and not to minimize some, because I know it's been a chit chat with my friends slash colleagues too, that in all seriousness, it's not going to be that easy to get up and get dressed and do all that and jump back in, especially with a schedule that's mixed, because we are so used to it, and we are creatures of habit. And remember, it's about 21 days for a habit to shift and stick. And also remember that it gets easier along the way. So I would say to, really, and for myself included this week, right, be gentle with ourselves and not to say, what's the matter with me? Like, this is such a low bar. I'm having trouble just getting up at the same time every day. I'm used to taking a shower in the afternoon or maybe even at night before I go to bed. And if we're all honest, we can admit to a couple days being virtual, going completely without a shower and throwing a hat on. And it's important to be gentle with ourselves, realizing that the entire world has been through a trauma with the pandemic. Again, never mind, all the additional ones, any families of color who have also had ongoing, racism, that trauma. And as well as, that's generational trauma, in addition to anything that may have happened to any of us as children. And we really need to cut ourselves some slack with having it feel difficult to start getting a routine of getting up every morning around the same time and getting dressed like we're in it to win it. And I have to chuckle because when I was looking for the images from my PowerPoint that I just did, well, actually a bunch in the last few weeks, like I said, pretty much every week, the last 5 or 6 weeks. And when I kind of Googled the images for, working at home dress code or attire or something like that, most images were of young men with a nice dress shirt, maybe even a tie in the top half, and very scantily clad on the bottom half. And then when I kind of Googled the working from home piece for the images for those webinars, there were so many images, one after the other, of college students, definitely, but also seasoned adults like myself, the fabulous 56, and everywhere in between 30s and 40s, and sitting on their beds. Some had kind of those lap trays that had a latte or a glass of wine even. And it's not the latte and the glass of wine, actually. If any of us who work at night, that's just fine. Or up early in the morning with the latte situation. Though sitting on the bed part is just so bad, and you'd see them all comfortable in jammies. There was one particular picture of a young man who was like under the cover, like completely almost pronate under the covers on his laptop. And whether he's a student doing homework or a professional person, there is no way that his best self is coming through, because the brain is so confused. And so this is probably one of the worst things we can do, is to be working on our beds, even in the bedroom, which is a little tougher for college students because their desk is there, but at least not ideal. It's better to do the old school trudge across the campus. That's a tough sell these days. But at least if there's a corner of the room, with a desk or something, and ideally a common area in the dorm that maybe is just down the hall. But to sit on a bed as a young adult, 30s, 40s, seasoned adult, older adult, whatever, is just the number one not to do. And again, this is from a cognitive, neurological standpoint. That this just has the brain so incredibly confused, and now it's mixing, relaxing with working, which means that you're really not either place ever. You're not. There's no relaxation because you're getting pieces of relaxation while you're doing productive things, and there's no, there needs to be kind of like a brick wall. On one side is doing the work, and on the other side is the relaxation, kind of as much as possible. What is also a good idea is then to have it, like an early evening routine. So hopefully that involves dinner, and depending on your various stages out there, of those of you who are listening, that might be going to the cafeteria. With college students, maybe, you know, preferably try not to take everything to go. Now that we're starting to get out a little bit, because that connection piece is also important. Though to eat dinner at about the same time. If you're at home with a partner, and family with kids, to eat dinner together is just so important. And we're saying to set the bar, do the best you can, right? Kids might be teenagers or little or a mix or first years or a blended family. And obviously in an ideal world, most nights, 5 or 6 out of 7 would be fabulous. And I know I had a New York Times article years ago, which I wish I kept, ages ago. And that was the number one for having children, become successful adults. And success was defined in a really great way. It was so long ago, I don't remember how, but it was, well adjusted and happy and, just all of it, good citizen, everything. And eating dinner together with no technology on, none, zero, no TV in the background, no technology, is the best way to go. And with our current circumstances, things being so a little chaotic across the United States and world, setting the bar, doing the best we can might be every other night or even just one night. If there's one night with a partner or a child or the whole crew or whatever, and have it be special. You can alternate who cooks or alternate, even different ethnic cuisines or whatever. But the whole point is to have that be a closure, a beginning of the closure to the day that is just so important. Even if it's pizza, who cares? As it's kind of letting the brain know this is a time for me to have a break, some social connection, and to just enjoy that one person or the family or a group of students or whatever, to just have some time for my brain to be off and to nourish my body, um, surrounded by people I care about. And this kind of just has a little sidecar note that food is often about more than just the food, right? Lots of cultures across the world have given, or have food is way more important than actually nourishing the body. And I grew up around uh, Italians in my neighborhoods, particularly this one family that my best friend from growing up is from, and I was really exposed to this wonderful culture, and the foods just went on and on and on, especially at the holidays, but even on a regular day. It was a big deal to sit down as a family, and it was a slow process. Out came this, out came that. Again, on an average Wednesday night or something. And, if there's a way to do that, and whatever that means for you, to really, as they say, break bread with, even if it's breaking pizza, with somebody or somebodies you really care about, this is a fantastic way to really be supporting the mind-body connection during these challenging times. So then, in addition to waking up at approximately the right, the right time, the same time each and every day is close to, if you can set your alarm for 7 a.m. or whatever it is that your body rhythm is, that's just great. If it is the same time, getting dressed, doing what you need to do, taking a lunch break again with a power walk if you can do it, and then we talked about the dinner thing being so important. In addition to all of this, and also we'll get back to the phone actually in a minute because that has changed from what I first read. Richard Carlson from way back in the 90s in his book Don't Sweat the Small Stuff with a Family, he said he's talking about the phone line thing. He said in addition to that, there's just the organizational piece, because when we have a separate workspace, which some of my colleagues have a whole separate little room designated. If you got a bunch of kids, that may not work, or partner who's also virtual. But again, if you can set aside a corner that's just yours to call your own, it can help so much. And Richard Carlson's talking about the organizational piece. And I know with my ADHD, I don't know if anything bothers my head more than clutter. I honestly do not. And so to be able to keep my folders and also keep it so simple, just have what you need right there, to do what you need to do virtually or to prepare for the next day if you're in person wherever you work, because it's so important. And he says the more you're able to keep your work separated from your home life, the less often you'll lose or misplace things. Amen, brother. Because I definitely still need to work at external organization. He's especially with everybody home. He said you'll know where to find your date book, or of course now phone, right? Your projects, phone numbers, and other important information. Things won't be so likely to get mixed up. You'll think of your workspace as just that, your workspace, and your home will be yours to enjoy. You'll feel more organized and less stressed out. Now, Mr. Carlson is fortunate enough, because he talks about it in his book, that he has an office upstairs in his house, and not all of us, have that luxury. If you do, great, because he literally talks about, it's almost like he's leaving work. He's up there for the day. I think he comes down for lunch or whatever, and when he's done for the day, it's kind of like leaving work. He leaves from upstairs to downstairs. Probably most of us don't have that luxury, though we can still make that work within our own, context and what we're able to do. We can, this is what I say to my students actually, give yourself a realistic amount of time. Realistic means to set ourselves up for success. So if you plan to study from because they're on a different schedule, right? They're later, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. at your desk without any, distractions, hopefully. Whatever is not done by 10 p.m. is not getting done. If it means you have to wake up early in the morning, so be it. But to draw a line in the sand. And the same is true for us seasoned grown-ups. So I know for us in this house, at least for me, my husband's been doing it along with me as well, though. Whatever is not done by 8 p.m., I'm talking about virtually in the house, right? In the workspace, is not getting done. And if there's something that's pressing that's due tomorrow, it might mean, and this has happened, that I get up at 5 a.m. and, grab that extra hour and a half back, and that's it. But it's so important to walk away from quote unquote work, even if that's in the corner of a living room or downstairs in an unfinished area, to be able to, just like you'd walk out the door of an office building and leave it there. And I will also share with you one thing we did for our youngest, who's currently a junior in college. And like most college students, they were sent home early. This is last semester. So far, so good this semester. But, we were trying to brainstorm what was a way to really help her be successful. And like myself, she is wired for an attentional difference, right? With distractions. And so her room, thankfully, is kind of off to the side downstairs. So she is kind of separate. And in no way do we live in a state. I don't want to paint that picture. It's just, regular house with regular space, but she's kind of off to the side. And so we tried to jazz it up like a dorm. And I went and bought, or ordered online, a little, kind of like a little table that's separate from her desk, where she could read and separate her studies from that little table. And also, I bought an intercom, which might sound over the top, but it really has worked out really well, because I didn't have to go down and bug her. She could bunker in and do her classes, because she had back-to-back classes. I forget her schedule now, but it was back-to-back classes, had a tiny little window for lunch. And this way, she also had some autonomy, because she could, when she was done, she could come up and grab a snack without me asking, walking through there with laundry or whatever like that. And I think it was $49 on Amazon. That was it. And the little little other box was upstairs by the kitchen, so I could just call her. You want me to bring you down, a cup of tea or something? And it worked out great because she had her space and she had some autonomy, and it was worked for everybody. And what a great idea. On the seasoned adult end, this could really work too. If somebody does have a workspace, even if it's kind of like a walk-in closet you took over, having that little not that can't be a lot of money sometimes. I'm not saying that, but wow, I can't tell you how great that was for the boundary thing and peace of mind, and it really helped her. So I'm thinking, our daughter Delaney, I'm really thinking that for somebody who does have a separate workspace at home, that could work like a charm for you. And then I'll say, if you have to do Zoom meetings, for the most part, at least for the ones that are really important, I would say turn your camera on. We're hearing a lot about, give your brain a rest and all that. And I think that's good with maybe the low priority calls, to just get on your phone, and maybe you can go outside and still listen. That works. But for the rest of them, I actually would say the opposite, to turn your camera on, because it also gives us that feeling of we're at work, we're professional. And even more importantly than that is the connection, because have such limited connectivity to each other right now, and we're wired for connection, that at least this is a way to connect and look at each other. And what a lot of people don't realize too is when their camera is off, they can see everybody else, but everybody else can't see you. And that's hard. It's very difficult to have a conversation with a black square on everybody else's end. It's just not as connected. And so I think what I would say with that is to, it's a gray area. Keep it on when it's important because it's good for everybody. And then those less important calls, to just be on the phone, Bluetooth in it, walking around outside, or I think is a good idea. Balance. And the other big push for the workspace, again, within however you can do it. If you're in a one bedroom, or studio apartment in New York City, or Venice, one of my second favorite cities, or second favorite city. Actually, that's a hard one. I'm also a big fan of Dublin and Galway. That's hard. Okay, so we'll just say one of my favorite cities. If you're in a one bedroom or studio apartment someplace and it's a corner, totally fine. And this is one thing, isn't due to the Rona situation, due to the Rona situation for me, because I've partially worked out of the home kind of along the way. And the boundary thing, even before the pandemic, has been a lot, especially if you have little kids home. And I remember when I was home with my kids way back when, because they're all in their 20s, one's almost 30 now. People just assumed that you were like off with your feet up in a big glass of lemonade or something, asking to do this, that, this, and that, not realizing you had 107 things to do. That was one thing, just boundaryless. And but also, it just has made it more challenging with my ADHD issues, is working out of the house when you don't have a workspace that you have designated just for that purpose. It's so easy to make calls in the living room and do this and then walk back and forth, and then all of a sudden you see a pile of laundry. So for me, that's all shiny object stuff. Not that that's shiny per se, but it grabs my attention. So just throw in a load of laundry, and then all of a sudden you see, oh, somebody left a few dishes in the sink. You might go, oh, well, I should really leave them for them. They need to get it that you know there's no maid service. They need to take care of themselves. You go back, run that dialogue through your head. Then you look at them again, realize you can't stand looking at them, and how are you supposed to get anything done when there's dishes in the sink, and you do that. Then all of a sudden you walk by, some unopened mail, so you do that. That reminds you that you need to go to the mail. So you might jump in the car and go mail the letters, yada, 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 yada. And meanwhile, a lot of valuable life minutes are being lost, and the time efficiency is not great, which therefore means less time for actual leisure. Whereas if we just have the workspace, hammer it out with our designated amount of time with a regular clock right there, hopefully the phone is turned off, have a regular clock right there. And this way we are able and learn to compartmentalize like that. We're actually saving our valuable life minutes to completely be off, even if it's for half an hour for a walk, like, let's say lunch and then walk, let's say an hour. Then from 12 to 1, you're not partially doing anything. You're done, and now you're relaxing and eating and enjoying your life minutes all the way to 1 o'clock. And it's such a better use of our life minutes than just letting these life minutes just leak away all over the house. And for me, as I mentioned, one more thing about the workspace is to keep it decluttered. Again, even if that's just a desk, I say the same thing to my students. You want limited anything that'll stimulate your brain there. It should be feng shui, very Spartan. The clutter within leads to clutter without, and the clutter without leads to clutter within. Either way, it takes away from our creative, productive energy. In addition to that, with someone with ADHD on the extreme end of the spectrum of that, it just hurts my head and it can affect mental health because it's just so too much to take in. And then, lastly, from a cognitive, neurological standpoint, it's really important to have an actual good night routine. If you have small kids or teenagers at home, even young adults at home, it's also good to role model this for them. It's good for us and it's good for them because the brain needs to know when the day is completely over. So you have the dinner routine, and then you're doing whatever you're doing, and then you actually have the good night routine that signals that the night is over. Drawing a line in the sand, the brain knows it's time to go to bed now. And hopefully it's the best practice, we'll say, to keep all screens off for about 3 hours before bed. If that's not realistic, especially with college students, then 2 hours, 1 hour, at least 1 hour, because we know that these contribute to insomnia, which is also an issue with the pandemic. People unable to fall asleep and stay asleep. So you're keeping away from all screens at night before going to bed is a good idea. Again, do the best you can with that. Set the bar always best you can. It's adjustable. We like that because we want to set it where we can reach it. Also, for the tea drinkers out there, a little chamomile tea isn't a bad idea. Any hot bath takers, this is also a good idea because all that heat and warmth not only soothes the spirit, it also signals the brain that the day has come to a lovely wind down and close and the day is done and we can now rest and have a nice good night sleep. And realizing that by really establishing these clear boundaries between work and home, that we are actually salvaging valuable life minutes. We're more productive, more creative, more innovative, all of it, and then we are then able to use our valuable life minutes, all those saved, to have time alone to ourselves, to go for a walk, to write in a journal, to have a hot bath or whatever, and also to plan something, fun, even if in the Rona it's just spending time with a partner or kids on a walk outside or whatever it is. We now have that time when we've separated work and home because we have saved these life minutes for leisure. And not only that, are we more, creative, productive, innovative, and do we have more leisure time? We are also overall just less stressed out, excited about life, and excited about what we're doing. So on that note, I will say to all my Mindcraft listeners out there in the United States and world, thank you, all of you, very much for listening. This is Kimberly Quinn signing off from Northern Vermont. Have a mindful day.